Dr. and Mrs. Seymour Gleed couldn't be prouder than they were on the day they witnessed their son, Ian Richard Gleed, stand before King George VI to receive his Distinguished Flying Cross. It was a big day for the Gleeds, and a pleasant change for His Majesty to present a medal to someone shorter than himself. Congratulations. I hope that we shall see you here again soon. Indeed, he did. Flight Lieutenant Gleed had every reason to be pleased with himself. A gong from the King, a party at the Savoy, and a brief respite from the machinery of war. In the official photographs, he looks as pleased as Punch. But there was a cloud hovering over this young hero, a cloud that could easily obliterate all the glory of his wartime achievements. Today, we would say Ian Gleed was gay. In 1941, that idea did not exist. There were only substitutes: degenerate, abomination, criminal. Well, nothing new there. So what's the big deal? Lots of people have secrets. Why does his matter more than most? Because it shaped every decision he made, every risk he took, every lie he told. And because this story doesn't work unless we understand how and why he was so good at getting away with things. So let's begin. The people in his story are real. The events happened. The story is mine. This is how I understand the life of Ian Gleed. Others may tell it differently, but I believe this version does him more justice. Ian Gleed was born into the comfortable middle-class world of Finchley in 1916. His birth was a source of joy and relief to his parents, as their firstborn was a daughter. In Edwardian England, that mattered. Europe was in a state of upheaval, as Britain was at war with Germany, but life in Finchley adhered to the rituals of a fading imperial past. His father, like so many, was absent, serving his country as a medical officer in the Royal Army Medical Corps. At the end of the war, he returned to family life and resumed a thriving medical practice. Ian's childhood adhered to a familiar blueprint for a boy of his class. A nanny in the home nursery, prep school at Tenterden from the age of 5, Epsom College in Surrey when he turned 12. By the standards of the day, he enjoyed as much family life as society thought necessary. His school days were unremarkable. He wasn't overly popular. He was bullied by older boys, but nothing exceptional for a public school. Bullying wasn't a failure of the system. It was the system. He played rugby, enjoyed boxing, and was always up for a prank, even if it was likely to be rewarded with a beating. He showed no interest in academic pursuits. One master later recalled, "He was not a boy to excite notice." But a public school education for a teenage boy in 1920s Britain was never about being noticed. It was about learning the code. You may touch, but not feel. You may explore, but not enjoy. And above all, you may indulge, but must never be caught. Those were the rules. The trick was to learn how far you could go. Naked wrestling, tick. Mutual masturbation, tick. Playful spanking, tickish. Buggery was discouraged. One might grow to like it. Former school acquaintances expressed amazement at his later prowess as a fighter pilot and his leadership skills. But they didn't realise Gleed learned the art of concealment at an early age. School photos show a boy already detached, already determined, but they reveal nothing of his appetite for risk. That would come later. Life at Epsom College was a world away from the grim reality of everyday life in 1930s Britain. For Ian, life resembled a Beano comic strip full of playful adventures and harmless mischiefs. Elsewhere, Britain was crumbling. There was industrial collapse, social unrest, and widespread poverty. The government ignored the cries for help and arrested the leaders of protest marches. Ian barely noticed it. Instead, he joined the Public Schools Exploring Society, founded to prevent boys like him from becoming softened by the comforts of modern life. In 1933, he volunteered to join an expedition to Finnish Lapland. It was an escapade torn from the pages of a boy's own annual. The teenage adventurers made their way to the north of Finland by ship, ferry, train and bus. They followed the wilderness trail that shadowed the Ulankajoki River through the Ulanka National Park to Mount Kutikongus before trekking on to shoot the rapids at Kailankoski. It was jolly good fun and totally tone deaf to the hardships most people were experiencing at home in Britain. In 1934, spurred on by his adventure in Finland, he joined an expedition to Newfoundland. This one almost cost him his life. Equipped with nothing but public school bravado, he set off alone on a trek into unexplored forest. He was lost, feared dead, for 5 days without food or water. He survived by foraging berries and drinking river water. He later admitted he had feared for his life. His survival was attributed to his stout heart and stocky build, but it revealed something else: determination and self-belief. Later that same year, his father purchased a bungalow, Highcliffe, at Herne Bay in Kent, as a retreat for the family. This house, only metres from the seafront, would be his sanctuary for the rest of his life. Highcliffe was 1,000,000 miles from London, but only a short walk from the Herne Bay Sailing Club. In the summer of 1934, he joined the club and discovered a passion for sailing, and with it, freedom and escape. Herne Bay Sailing Club would also introduce him to the love of his life, but more of that later. Any hopes his parents held for him to follow in his father's footsteps towards a career in medicine had completely evaporated by 1935. That dream passed to his older sister, Daphne. Gleed had far loftier ambitions. He dreamed of a career with the RAF. He met most of the desirable entry requirements for officer training: young, British, public school education, but lacked the essential academic qualifications. All those years of public school education, and he couldn't pass a basic maths test. Was he humbled? Not remotely. He did what he had to do. He enrolled on a private cramming course, gritted his teeth, and got to work. The swatting paid off. On the 9th of March 1936, he was accepted for a short service commission with the RAF. From that moment, his life quite literally takes off. He's posted to a private flying training school at Filton near Bristol, learning the basics of flying in two-seater Tiger Moth aircraft. He then moves on to the RAF depot at Uxbridge and then the No. 8 Flying Training School at Montrose in Scotland. He works hard and studies hard, progressing on to Hawker Hart and Gladiator planes. These were primitive aircraft by later standards, unforgiving machines from the infancy of aviation. The RAF was a big deal for Montrose, but Montrose was a dreary place for well-heeled posh boys from the south of England. There was no shortage of pubs in Montrose, but Gleed and his friend, Peter Comston, thought it worth the effort to drive 500 miles in Gleed's small Ford motorcar to enjoy a weekend in London, a return journey that took 20 hours. It tells you something about restlessness, about appetite, and about what he is prepared to do for pleasure. Gleed finds his happy place in the RAF. He gains his civil flying licence in July 1936, demonstrating flair and ability as a pilot, and quickly progresses to single-seat combat planes. In December 1936, he is rewarded with a posting to the No. 46 Squadron based at RAF Kenley in Surrey. Pilot officer Ian Gleed is ready to make his mark in the world. Unfortunately, the posting doesn't get off to a good start. He's on a routine training flight in a Gloucester Gauntlet open cockpit fighter plane when he misjudges his approach to the runway, clips the chimney of a house, tears off the undercarriage and crash lands the aircraft. He climbs from the wreckage unharmed, but the Gauntlet is written off. His squadron leader is relieved he hasn't lost a promising pilot and furious at the loss of a valuable aircraft. In July 1937, he officially comes of age. He has proven to his parents that his passion for flying is more than a schoolboy fantasy. They show their approval with a gift that speaks volumes: a 14-foot sailing dinghy, Spindrift, and celebrate with a lunch at the Grosvenor House Hotel in London. Their generosity reveals their pride in his achievements. The dinghy cost close to a year's wages for a typical working man in 1937. Gleed is now living the life. He lives in the officers' quarters, has a servant at his beck and call, and enjoys 3 meals a day in the officers' dining room. He has the camaraderie of his fellow trainee officers, and he has status. All this, and he's only 21 years old. Okay, he's a tad on the short side, but he's quick to point out he's the perfect height for a fighter pilot. No arguing with that. He's handsome, he's charming, he's well connected, and he cuts a fine figure in his RAF uniform. The world is his oyster. There's just one thing missing: a girlfriend or the occasional popsy. But he does have a chum, someone who shares his love of sailing, someone who becomes his constant off-duty companion, a teenage boy named Teddy. Gleed meets Edward Teddy Denman through the Herne Bay Sailing Club in the summer of 1937. Teddy is 14 years of age and Gleed is 21. Despite their age difference, they become close friends who share a passion for sailing. That's the official story told by Teddy 40 years later to Norman Franks, Gleed's biographer. And that's a story that sticks, until it doesn't. blown out of the water in 1997 by the testimony of Christopher Gotch, Gleed's wartime lover. He was the first bloke who buggered me, and it went extremely well. Well, that certainly set the record straight, so to speak. But it gets even better. It turns out that the true story of Ian Gleed's relationship with Teddy Denman has been hiding in plain sight since 1942. And the author of that story was Gleed himself. Is this getting confusing? To understand Gleed's relationship with Teddy, you need to understand his relationship with Pam. And who, you ask, is Pam? Let's step forward a few years to get a better grip on how all the pieces of this puzzle fit together. In 1941, the British public were badly in need of some good news stories. The Blitz had wreaked devastation on major cities, and the Battle of Britain had come closer to disaster than Winston Churchill was willing to admit. The Ministry of Information hit on the idea of commissioning public figures to write their own morale-boosting war stories. They needed decent chaps from good schools, preferably with a medal or two, writing skills optional. The recently decorated air ace, Ian Gleed, DFC, fitted the bill perfectly. Gleed was probably recommended by his friends Somerset Maugham and Hector Bolitho, successful authors who served their country producing wartime propaganda. Did you clock that? Ian Gleed, whose favourite pastime was sailing, thought opera was boring and hardly ever read a book, was friends with Somerset Maugham and Hector Bolitho, two of the most prominent British literary figures of the era. What on earth did they have in common? Well, Maugham and Bolitho were middle-aged, clandestine homosexuals who delighted in the company of handsome young men. And Ian Gleed was young and handsome and, as we now know, homosexual. I told you he was well connected. To be fair, sailing did play a role in Maugham and Gleed becoming friends. Gleed caught Maugham's attention when he was on vacation near Maugham's villa on the French Riviera in 1938. Maugham liked what he saw and placed his yacht at Gleed's disposal, thereby cementing their friendship. Maugham famously had 2 dress rules for guests at the Villa Moresque. A dinner jacket was mandatory for evening meals, and bathing costumes were optional in the swimming pool. Gleed's wartime memoir, A Rise to Conquer, was published in May 1942. It offered a first-hand account of a young fighter pilot caught up in the maelstrom of the Battle of France and the Battle of Britain. There's a touching account of Gleed and a young pilot sleeping together naked when they take refuge in a French billet. The young man is killed soon after. The description of their vulnerability and exhaustion is a rare moment of candour in an otherwise lifeless memoir. A Rise to Conquer also introduces Pam, his loyal and devoted fiancée. Gleed assures us that despite their love for each other, marriage is out of the question until his job is done. They share a love of sailing and a dream of a life together, but happiness for the devoted couple must wait until the war's end. Gleed's family were dumbfounded. Who is this person? Sheepishly, he admitted she was invented at the insistence of the publisher, read the Ministry of Information, to reassure the public their hero was every bit the red-blooded heterosexual that the war propaganda machine demanded. But here's the thing. Pam wasn't entirely fictitious. Pam was Teddy Denman. When Gleed was told to include a love interest in the memoir, he didn't need to go far for inspiration. He simply inserted Teddy into the story. Their love of sailing, their adventures in London, their plans to sail to the South Seas together. All Teddy and all real. What did Teddy think of this? He, better than anyone, could see what Gleed had done, the declaration he was making. Gleed was making his feelings for Teddy crystal clear, but we will never know how much they were reciprocated. So let's return to 1937. Spindrift presents Gleed with a problem and an opportunity. He is now based at RAF Kenley in Surrey, and the dinghy is stored at Herne Bay in Kent. Gleed needs someone to take care of his most treasured possession. Teddy Denman, a mere schoolboy, completes the triangle. The boat provides an alibi. The alibi allows intimacy. To the world, they were devoted friends, spending all their available time together in Herne Bay. They had the luxury of privacy and all the protection their class afforded them. Throughout 1937 and 1938, Teddy becomes Gleed's constant off-duty companion. His devotion to the boy slides steadily into hubris. He concocts a plan. If he borrows a Tiger Moth plane for training purposes on Friday afternoons, he can fly from RAF Kenley to the airbase at Manston. He can then spend the weekend sailing with Teddy at Herne Bay before flying back to Kenley on Monday morning. It's a schoolboy prank on steroids, but he gets away with it repeatedly. In August 1938, Gleed skippers the Morinel, a 17-ton Hilliard schooner, from Ramsgate Harbour to Ostend, in the hope of attracting a buyer for the boat. His crew includes Teddy and several chums from the Herne Bay Sailing Club. There's no quick sale, but eventually a buyer is found. Flying Officer Ian Gleed. Quite an achievement for a junior RAF pilot. The boat cost close to £1,200, enough to buy 2 new houses in pre-war metropolitan London. This is not a whim. This is his commitment to their dream of a shared future. After Gleed's death, Teddy will learn that Gleed had bequeathed the boat to him. On the 1st of September 1939, war is declared. The halcyon days of Gleed's life come to an end. He's posted as flight commander to 266 Squadron, Sutton Bridge, spending the first few months familiarising himself with the latest high-speed fighter planes, Hawker Hurricanes, his personal favourite, and the Supermarine Spitfires. It does not go completely smoothly. He crashes again. A mechanical failure leads to him being ejected through the perspex canopy of the Spitfire. He regains consciousness tumbling through open sky before managing to deploy his parachute. He survives, but is grounded for nearly 3 months. It's not all bad news. He does manage to secure a 10-day pass. Herne Bay beckons, and Teddy. In May 1940, Acting Flight Lieutenant Widge Gleed is declared fit for full duty and posted to 87 Squadron in France. The so-called phony war is over. The Widge nickname stems from his short stature and his legendary use of wizard as a show of approval for anything. everything. No such thing as political correctness in the 1940s. In the first week of his command of his group, he shoots down 6 enemy aircraft. The legend of Ian Gleed is born. But his time in France is brief. German panzer divisions are sweeping across the country, and the world's greatest army collapses virtually overnight. His squadron is ordered to retreat to England. The Battle of Britain rages throughout the summer of 1940, and Gleed is in the thick of it. His bravery, fighting prowess and leadership earn him the respect of all who know him. One of his pilots puts it simply, "We would have followed the Widge anywhere," and did. In September, he is awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. In December, he is promoted to squadron leader. In February 1941, he stands before the King at Buckingham Palace. His world is spinning ever faster. In May 1941, he is instrumental in establishing an RAF airfield on St Mary's in the Isle of Scilly. Strategically, his initiative provides the south of England with improved protection from the Luftwaffe. Personally, it offers something else: access. Teddy is now nearing the end of his schooling. He concocts another wizard plan, his best yet. If he borrows a Tiger Moth plane from the squadron at RAF Northolt, disguises Teddy in a fake RAF uniform, and flies him to St Mary's, they can enjoy a few days sailing before flying him back to Northolt. He manages to pull off the stunt 4 times over the summer before they are caught. Now, transporting a civilian in an RAF aircraft is a serious offence, but Gleed is a decorated hero. So, expedience trumps rules, as is often the case in times of war. He escapes punishment. In November 1941, Gleed's life takes a decisive turn. He is posted to RAF Middle Wallop and appointed acting wing commander. He is now the leader of 3 squadrons and is not yet 24 years of age. A fellow wing commander described him thus: "He was, I unhesitatingly say, one of the most courageous men I have ever had the privilege to know. He may have been tiny in stature, but by God he had a big heart and seemed not to have any fear." But he did feel fear, not of death, of loss. He felt the loss of the pilots under his command and longed for an end to the war. He confided to his friend Hector Bolitho, "I've grown up too fast. I want to be treated as if I were a boy again. It's something I have lost, and I want it back." What had he lost? Boyhood? Innocence? Or Teddy? They were still in contact, but had their intimacy been shattered by the demands of war? We don't know, because neither Denman, nor Bolitho, nor Maugham, nor Gleed record the details of the drama that his life had become. Remember the rules. You may touch, but not feel. You may explore, but not enjoy. And above all, you may indulge, but must never be caught. Never being caught means never writing anything down. And all this explains what happens when pilot officer Christopher Gotch unexpectedly finds his wing commander in his quarters one evening at Middle Wallop looking through his photo album. Gleed doesn't greet him. He doesn't explain. He just leans in and kisses him on the lips. For the next 3 months, they find something close to peace, and perhaps Gleed rediscovers what he feels he has lost. They talk, they laugh, they escape. They become lovers. Their affair was reckless, tender, and profoundly dangerous. And then the war reclaims them. Gleed's hubris is their undoing. They only have eyes for each other, but their group captain couldn't help but see what was happening in plain sight. Did he disapprove? Probably not. But these things can't be allowed to get out of hand. Think of morale. Court-martial is out of the question. He's too valuable, too celebrated, too carefully packaged by the Ministry of Information as the heroic young air ace. The solution is simple. He is removed, and the affair is over. In July 1942, Gleed is posted to a desk job in HQ Fighter Command in Stanmore, near London. It was like rewarding a hunting dog with a new cage. He continues to enjoy the delights that only a city like London can offer in wartime, and his service is recognised with the award of a Distinguished Service Order. But the confinement is intolerable. Flying has been his life for 6 years. Somehow, through charm, threats, or promises, he persuades his superiors to post him for active service at headquarters, RAF Middle East, from the 1st of January 1943. The Widge is airborne again. The fighting in North Africa is relentless and punishing until the Allies finally capture Tripoli and the strategic air base at Castel Benito. Gleed's seniority and battle experience could have spared him from the most exhausting missions, but that wasn't his style. He chooses to fight. In the final 16 days of his life, he flies 14 missions. Gleed faced the enemy for the final time on the afternoon of 16th of April 1943. His Spitfire sustains heavy damage during aerial combat over the sea off Cap Bon in Tunisia. His plane is seen trailing smoke, heading for the coast. It is not known whether he was wounded. The following day he is declared missing, presumed dead. He was 2 months short of his 27th birthday. After the war ends, Gleed's plane was found in the sand dunes close to the seafront at Cap Bon. The plane was largely intact, and its condition indicated it had glided rather than nosedived into the earth. It is presumed he was killed in the crash. His final resting place is the military cemetery at Enfidaville in Tunisia. And that is where the story pauses for the next 50 years, until Christopher Gotch breaks the silence that condemns men like Gleed to invisibility and irrelevance. We owe a huge debt to Christopher for bringing Ian Gleed back into the light, for reminding us that heroes can be just as messy and reckless and frail and loving as anyone else, and sometimes they are simply men trying not to be alone.